You can tell a lot about a man by the way he reacts to a minor textile-related emergency. When my favorite 5mm circular bamboo needle snapped back from a viciously tangled skein of hand-dyed merino wool and smacked me squarely in the left eye, my life didn't flash before my eyes. Instead, I just saw a blinding flash of hot pink wool and felt an immediate, watery sting. Clutching my face, I abandoned my shop, the knitted knot, and stumbled 2 doors down into Clear Vision Optometry, looking for a miracle, or at least some numbing drops. The moment the brass bells chimed, I stepped into what could only be described as a sensory deprivation chamber for a color enthusiast. Everything was white, beige, or chrome. And standing right in the center of this sterile tundra was Dr. Arthur Pendleton. He was wiping down a massive, terrifying metallic eye gadget with a microfiber cloth, moving with the terrifying precision of a Swiss clockmaker. His tie was clipped exactly between his 3rd and 4th shirt buttons. His hair looked like it had been styled with a spirit level. And his glasses were so clean I wasn't entirely convinced there was actually glass in the frames. "I need a medic," I gasped, keeping my hand firmly clamped over my weeping eye. "Or a wizard, preferably one with an eye patch." Dr. Pendleton slowly turned, adjusting his glasses by the bridge with one finger. He looked at my oversized, hand-knitted mustard yellow cardigan, which granted had a few intentional drop stitches, and blinked. "Ma'am, this is an optometry clinic. If you are having a medical emergency, the hospital is 3 blocks over." "I can't make it 3 blocks, I'm functionally monocular right now," I groaned, lowering my hand just enough to show him the angry red welt swelling on my eyelid. "An accident occurred. A knitting casualty. A high-tension yarn snap." He winced, his perfectly groomed eyebrows knitting together in genuine horror. "You assaulted your own ocular orbit with a knitting implement." "It wasn't an assault, it was a gauging incident. It's a size 8. That's 5mm, doctor, a very standard width for worsted weight," I defended, wincing as a fresh tear tracked down my cheek. "And it hurts like a mother pearler." He let out a long, slow sigh that sounded like a tire deflating, but the clinical coldness dropped just a fraction. Gently, he took my elbow. His touch was warm, surprisingly firm, and completely sent a jolt right through my yarn-stained fingers. He guided me into exam room 1, and gestured toward a giant leather chair. "Seat, Miss Croft." "Penny," I mumbled, settling in and immediately feeling the urge to fidget. He pulled a massive rolling microscope right up to my face. The scent of him, crisp mint, expensive soap, and a hint of laundry starch, completely invaded my space. It was infuriatingly intoxicating. "Keep your right eye open and look straight at my ear, Penny," he instructed, his voice dropping into a low, commanding professional drone. "Which ear? The left or the right? They're both very symmetrical. Do you ever let your hair down, doctor, or is it structurally integrated into your skull?" "Miss Croft," he said, his face mere inches from mine as he focused a bright blue sliver of light onto my eye. "I am inspecting a superficial corneal scratch. If you keep talking, your eye moves. If your eye moves, I cannot see the depth of the abrasion. So please hold still." I went entirely still, my good eye locking onto his. Up close, behind those pristine lenses, his eyes weren't just standard blue. They were the exact shade of a rich, deep indigo dye pot. For a split second, I saw his fingers twitch against the dial of the machine, his breath hitching just a tiny bit. I smiled inwardly, realizing that despite his starched exterior, Dr. Arthur Pendleton wasn't entirely immune to a little bit of chaos. Chapter 1. If you had told me that morning that I would soon be held hostage in a leather chair by a man who looked like he alphabetized his spice rack by botanical origin, I would have laughed. Then, I would have gone back to counting my rows. But life, much like a badly wound center pull yarn cake, is full of unexpected knots. "Please try to blink as little as possible, Miss Croft," Dr. Arthur Pendleton said, his voice dripping with the kind of practiced, clinical calm that makes you want to pop a paper bag just to see if he can startle. "Easy for you to say," I mumbled, though the phrase came out warped because his fingers were gently but firmly anchoring my upper brow. "Your eye isn't currently throwing a tantrum. It feels like a miniature cactus is throwing a rave on my iris." "That would be the foreign body sensation caused by a localized trauma to your epithelium," Arthur replied, entirely unfazed by my metaphor. He was leaning in so close I could see the microscopic weave of his perfectly starched white lab coat. He smelled infuriatingly good, like peppermint lozenges, crisp winter air, and a total lack of spontaneous joy. And considering you admitted to piercing yourself with a 5mm metal spike, you are lucky the damage is superficial. It's a US size 8 needle, Arthur. Precision matters, I grunted, trying to look at him with my one functional, non-weeping eye. It is Dr. Pendleton, Miss Croft. And in this room, precision is my metric. He adjusted the dial on the massive, sci-fi-looking microscope parked an inch from my nose. A brilliant, razor-thin slit of blue light cut across my vision, causing my left eye to leak a fresh torrent of tears. Now keep your gaze fixed exactly on the top tip of my right ear. Do not track the light. Why your ear? I wheezed, my fingers desperately clutching the edge of the examination chair. I was experiencing severe yarn withdrawal. Usually, when I'm stressed, my hands are busy working a nice, repetitive garter stitch. Right now they were just sweating against faux leather. Is your ear a designated medical landmark? It is a stable, non-moving point of reference. Unlike your mouth, which appears to have an independent power source. He clicked a lens into place inside the apparatus. Snap. Infiltration of the cornea looks minimal, but there is a distinct linear abrasion across the central zone. Fluorescein staining will confirm the depth. Fluorescent what? Am I going to glow in the dark? Because if so, I have a neon green worsted weight merino that would pair beautifully with that. Arthur sighed. It was a spectacular, deep, rhythmic inhalation that spoke of a man who regularly practiced yoga solely for the lung capacity to deal with difficult patients. Fluorescein is a diagnostic dye, Miss Croft. It turns yellow-green under cobalt blue light to highlight structural defects in the cornea. It does not turn you into a rave accessory. He stepped away to retrieve a small strip of paper. I took the brief intermission to actually look at my captor. Underneath the rigid, starched to within an inch of its life exterior, the man was criminally handsome. He had a sharp, structural jawline that looked like it had been drafted with a T-square, and dark indigo eyes hidden behind frames so clean they practically defied the laws of physics. It was tragic, really. A waste of prime genetic material on a man who probably viewed a fun Saturday night as updating his spreadsheets. Lean forward, please, he commanded, returning to my side. With an incredibly steady hand, he touched the chemically treated strip to the moist corner of my lower eyelid. Ooh, tingly, I remarked. That is the saline carrier. Now look back into the biomicroscope. I leaned back into the chin rest, pressing my forehead against the plastic strap. The blue light flared again. I could feel him studying me, his breathing catching for a fraction of a second as he manipulated the joystick to focus the beam. The abrasion is exactly 3 millimeters in length, Arthur murmured, his tone shifting into something almost reverent, like a mathematician beholding a perfect equation. Clean margins. No sign of cellular debris from the... What did you call it? The metal rod. It's a seamless stainless steel circular needle, I said proudly. Slick as ice, perfect for fast knitting. It wasn't a defect in the tool, doctor. It was user error. A classic tension malfunction. I was dealing with a massive yarn barf. That's when the center pull of a yarn cake collapses on itself and tangles. I used the slick metal tip of the needle to pry the knot apart. It slipped under high tension, deflected off my thumb, and bam, straight into the ocular orbit. Arthur slowly backed the microscope away, clicking off the light. The room returned to its normal, aggressively beige illumination. He looked down at me, his arms crossed over his chest, his expression a mix of profound professional disapproval and mild bewilderment. You managed to turn a passive domestic craft into a ballistic trajectory hazard, he stated. Knitting is an extreme sport, I countered, sitting back and wiping my wet cheek with the sleeve of my oversized mustard cardigan. You clearly don't understand the physics of tightly spun worsted weight yarn under duress. I understand the physics of a solid steel object striking a fluid-filled sphere at high velocity, Miss Croft. And my diagnosis is that you are grounded from your metal sticks until the epithelium undergoes complete mitosis. He turned around, snapping on a pair of latex gloves with a sharp thwack that made me jump. From a drawer, he pulled out a small, circular piece of black fabric with an elastic band. My jaw dropped. Is that an eye patch? A pressure patch, he corrected, stepping toward me with the terrifying determination of a man about to balance a checkbook. It will keep the eyelid immobile, preventing the blinking reflex from repeatedly scraping open the healing cells. You will wear it for 48 hours. 48 hours. Arthur, Dr. Pendleton. I run a business. I can't determine the gauge of a lace-weight shawl with zero depth perception. I'll look like a pirate who took up home economics. Then you will be a highly compliant, non-blinking pirate, he said smoothly. Before I could protest further, he leaned over me, his hands moving with efficient grace as he slipped the elastic band over my messy curls. His fingers brushed against my temple, sending a sudden, bizarre ripple of warmth straight down my spine. For a second, our eyes locked. His indigo gaze flicked down to my mouth, then snapped back up to my good eye, a sudden subtle flush creeping up his collar. He stepped back instantly, clearing his throat and adjusting his tie clip. Apply these antibiotic drops 4 times a day. Do not touch the tip of the bottle to your lashes. We want to avoid bacterial colonization. I will see you on Thursday for a follow-up assessment. I stood up, adjusting the black patch over my left eye. The world was suddenly flat and half gone, but my remaining eye was fixed entirely on him. Thank you, doctor, I said, giving him my best, one-eyed roguish grin. I'd say I'll see you Thursday, but honestly, half of you is currently missing. Arthur didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just picked up his microfiber cloth and began wiping down the microscope again. Keep it clean, Miss Croft. And please step away from the wool. A turnip, I muttered to myself as I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, the brass bells jangling behind me. A beautiful, starched, medical turnip. But as I stepped out into the afternoon sun, my fingers were already tingling with the sudden, chaotic urge to knit him something completely ridiculous. Chapter 2. Living with monocular vision is a humbling experience. It turns out that stereopsis, the brain's ability to use both eyes to perceive depth, is fairly crucial when pouring hot coffee, navigating door frames, or attempting to cast on stitches. By Tuesday morning, I had already bruised my left hip against the counter and accidentally poured half a cup of oat milk directly onto the breakroom floor. You look like a villain in a daytime soap opera, my cousin Jenny noted, not looking up from where she was arranging a fresh display of pastel pink and cream crochet scrunchies near the register. I had been slowly trying to transition the front window of the knitted knot into a minimalist, soft life cozy aesthetic, but my current medical accessory was severely ruining the vibe. I am a highly compliant, non-blinking pirate. Thank you very much, I replied, adjusting the black pressure patch over my left eye. I couldn't stand the sterile look of the standard issue medical foam, so last night, using my one good eye and a terrifying amount of fabric glue, I had affixed a neat row of rose gold sequins around the border. If Dr. Pendleton was going to ground me from my metal knitting needles, I was at least going to convalesce with some sparkle. You're supposed to be resting the epithelium, Jenny teased, tossing a ball of impossibly soft, blush pink baby wool at my head. I missed the catch entirely, my depth perception wildly miscalculating the trajectory, and the yarn bounced softly off my shoulder. I am resting it. Underneath this glamorous exterior, my cellular margins are undergoing rapid mitosis. I'm practically Wolverine. I picked up the baby wool and a set of 4mm stainless steel double-pointed needles. Since I couldn't tackle large, complex garments without getting a headache, I had decided to knit tiny, mindless things. A baby sock, a coaster, maybe a tiny sweater for a very cold lemon. That was when I saw him. Through the large sunlit window of the shop, pacing down the quaint cobblestone sidewalk of Willow Creek, came Dr. Arthur Pendleton. He moved with the kind of rigid, biomechanical efficiency that suggested he measured his strides in exact centimeters. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit him with devastating precision, and in his hand was an entirely unembellished plastic cup of iced coffee. No caramel drizzly, no whipped cream, no joy. Just cold, caffeinated bean water. Oh look, I murmured, leaning against the glass display case. It's Dr. Turnip. Jenny followed my gaze. The optometrist who patched you up? Penny, he's gorgeous. He looks like a classic romantic lead who just needs a woman to teach him how to love in the rain. He looks like a man who calculates the aerodynamic drag of his own necktie. I snorted, though my stomach did a strange, completely non-medical flutter. As if sensing the gravitational pull of my judgment, Arthur's head turned. His indigo eyes locked onto the window of the knitted knot, and he stopped dead in his tracks. I didn't break eye contact. Instead, I raised my right hand, which was currently gripping the bright pink skein of baby wool, and gave him an enthusiastic, highly uncoordinated wave. Arthur's gaze darted from the soft, fluffy yarn in my hand up to my face. He took in the wild auburn curls I hadn't bothered to tame, the oversized cream sweater slipping off my shoulder, and finally, the bedazzled sequin pressure patch strapped across my eye. Even through a pane of glass and 10 feet of sidewalk, I could see the exact moment his clinical composure short-circuited. His perfectly straight posture stiffened. His lips parted slightly, and the iced coffee in his hand tilted a dangerous 3 degrees off its vertical axis. He looked like a man who had spent his entire life studying the predictable geometry of the universe, only to be confronted by a glittery, yarn-wielding anomaly. He didn't wave back. Instead, he gave a curt, jerky nod that was so formal it practically required a parliamentary vote, righted his coffee cup, and power walked toward his clinic as if outrunning a textile-based plague. "Smooth," Jenny laughed, returning to her scrunchies. "You really swept him off his perfectly polished feet." "Just wait," I said, a grin stretching across my face, pulling slightly at the adhesive of my patch. I looked down at the smooth, cool metal of my 4mm needles, the gears in my chaotic brain already turning. He told me to step away from the wool, but he didn't say anything about bringing the wool to him. Chapter 3. Knitting with a loss of binocular vision is an extreme sport that no one talks about. Without depth perception, judging the distance between the tip of a 5mm stainless steel needle and the working yarn becomes a game of tactile roulette. I decided the best way to thank Dr. Pendleton for saving my cornea, and to subtly torture his aesthetic sensibilities, was to make him a scarf. I dug through the back room of the knitted knot until I found a forgotten, discontinued skein of worsted weight superwash merino. The colorway was officially labeled Tangerine Dream, but realistically, it was the exact blinding hue of a highway traffic cone. It was aggressive. It was highly visible. It was the complete antithesis of his clinical, grayscale existence. It will improve his contrast sensitivity, I reasoned to Jenny, who was watching me attempt to cast on stitches while squinting out of my one good eye. If he drops it in a snowbank, he'll be able to find it immediately. "It looks like you're knitting a warning sign," she observed. She wasn't entirely wrong. I opted for a simple 2x2 rib stitch. Knit 2, purl 2, which creates a stretchy, squishy fabric. Normally, I could do it with my eyes closed, but with one eye forcibly patched, my tension was completely erratic. The slick metal needles clinked furiously as I worked, my fingers fumbling. About 30 rows in, I missed a yarn over. 10 rows later, I accidentally knit 2 stitches together, a classic K2 tog decrease, which I didn't notice until the right side of the scarf began to pull aggressively inward. By the time I bound off the final row, the garment had taken on a distinct, tragic slant. It was undeniably asymmetrical. To make matters worse, I counted exactly 3 unraveled ladders where I had dropped stitches and utterly failed to pick them back up. It was an architectural disaster. It was a structural nightmare. I loved it. The next morning, an hour before Clear Vision Optometry opened its doors, I tiptoed 2 shops down. The morning air was crisp, and the street was empty. I placed the folded neon orange abomination into a crisp white paper bag, scribbled a note on a piece of cardstock, and hung it from the clinic's polished chrome door handle. The note read, "Dr. Pendleton. A highly visible, low-velocity textile to protect your cervical spine from ambient drafts. Thank you for the rapid mitosis. Penelope, the non-blinking pirate." I retreated to my shop, poured myself a cup of Earl Grey, and camped out behind my front window display of silk blend fingering yarns to watch the drop-off. At exactly 7:45 a.m., Arthur approached his clinic. He was in a navy blue suit today, looking sharp enough to cut glass, holding his standard joyless iced coffee. He paused at his door, noticing the bag. I held my breath, peering through a gap in the yarn display. He carefully removed the bag from the handle, as if it might contain a biological hazard. Setting his coffee down on the window ledge, he reached inside. When he pulled out the scarf, the safety orange wool practically glowed in the morning sunlight. Even from a distance, I saw his shoulders stiffen. He held it up by 2 corners. Thanks to the dropped stitches and my terrible monocular tension, the scarf hung at a bizarre, slumped angle, looking less like a winter accessory and more like a melted slice of cheddar cheese. Arthur stared at it for a long, agonizing moment. He turned it over, inspecting the structural integrity with the same devastating critical eye he used on my scratched epithelium. I saw him shake his head, a gesture of profound, optical despair. I waited for him to stuff it back into the bag and throw it in the municipal trash can. Instead, he did the unthinkable. Looking left, then right, as if checking for fashion police, Dr. Arthur Pendleton draped the violently orange, heavily flawed scarf around his neck. It clashed aggressively with his tailored navy suit. It completely ruined his minimalist silhouette. He picked up his coffee, unlocked his clinic door, and walked inside, taking my hideous, dropped-stitch masterpiece with him. I sank down below the window display, pressing my hands to my hot cheeks, a completely unmedical flutter erupting in my chest. Oh no, I thought, my heart doing a complicated twisted stitch pattern. The turnip has layers. Chapter 4. By Thursday morning, my 48 hours of mandatory monocular piracy were officially up. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, carefully peeling away the medical tape that held my sequin pressure patch in place. I blinked my left eye, bracing for the sting of 1,000 tiny, angry cactuses. But there was nothing. No pain, no blurriness, just the crisp, perfectly focused reflection of a woman with a terrible case of bedhead and a massive crush on a rigid medical professional. My cellular mitosis had been a resounding success. I celebrated by grabbing my favorite 3.5mm stainless steel circulars and speed knitting 3 rows of a lace-weight silk camisole before breakfast. It felt glorious to have my depth perception back. My gauge was flawless. My tension was immaculate. At 10 a.m., I pushed open the heavy glass door of Clear Vision Optometry, the brass bells announcing my arrival. "Good morning, Miss Croft," Dr. Pendleton said. He was standing behind the reception desk, meticulously aligning a stack of patient intake forms. He was back in his stark white lab coat, his indigo eyes flicking up to assess me. "Good morning, Dr. P," I chirped. "I am entirely bilateral today." As I walked toward exam room 1, my newly restored binocular vision caught a flash of high-visibility color on the sleek brushed metal coat rack in the corner. There, draped carefully over the shoulder of a very expensive-looking wool trench coat, was my safety orange, heavily flawed, dropped-stitch masterpiece. He had actually worn it to work again. I felt a smug, warm satisfaction blossom in my chest. "Take a seat," Arthur instructed, following me into the exam room. He pulled up his rolling stool, leaning in close to position the heavy biomicroscope in front of my face. "Let's take a look at the repair work. Chin on the rest, forehead against the band." I complied, eagerly anticipating the peppermint and starch scent of him. The blue slit lamp beam snapped on, sweeping across my eye. "Remarkable," he murmured softly, his face just inches from mine. "The epithelium has fully regenerated. There's absolutely no scarring on the stroma. Your cornea is completely smooth." "So I'm cleared for high-speed metal crafting?" I asked, my voice dropping just a fraction. Arthur pulled the microscope away, his eyes lingering on mine for a second longer than was strictly necessary for a medical evaluation. "You may resume your textile manipulations. However, I strongly suggest you wear protective eyewear if you insist on utilizing those metal weapons of yours under such aggressive tension. It's called worsted weight, Arthur. You have to show it who's boss." He cleared his throat, a faint pink flush coloring the tips of his ears. He quickly spun around on his stool, clicking a button on a remote control. At the far end of the room, a digital screen lit up, displaying the standard, black and white Snellen eye chart. "Let's check your visual acuity to ensure there are no refractive errors post-healing," he said, slipping back into his smooth, clinical baritone. "Please cover your right eye with your palm and read the lowest line you can see clearly." I covered my right eye and looked at the screen. The bottom row was crystal clear. It read, EKTPZ. I paused. The air in the tiny, sterile room felt suddenly very warm. The man had worn my atrocious, asymmetrical orange scarf. He deserved to have his perfectly calibrated world rattled just a little bit more. "Okay, let's see," I said, squinting slightly for dramatic effect. "Oh." Arthur paused, his pen hovering over my digital chart on his tablet. "I'm sorry, did you say you? Are you looking at line 8? "Yes, line 8. Clear as day," I lied confidently. "Oh, air." Arthur frowned, glancing over his shoulder at the digital chart. "Miss Croft, there is no R on line 8. Or on line 7. Are you experiencing ghosting or double vision? We may need to check for astigmatic shifts." "Nope, no ghosting," I continued, leaning forward into the chair. "Oh, air. A. Arthur's voice ticked up half an octave. He pushed his glasses up his nose, looking genuinely distressed. "Penny, if you are seeing an We have a serious neurological discrepancy. Let's try frogging back to line 6. He caught himself, his eyes widening slightly. Excuse me. Let's revert to line 6. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from laughing. He had just used a knitting term. Frogging. Ripping out your stitches because you made a mistake. Rip it equals frog. I had corrupted him. O-R-A-Q-T. I finished triumphantly, lowering my hand and grinning right at him. The silence in the exam room was deafening. Arthur stared at the screen, which clearly still displayed EKTPZ. Then he slowly turned his head to look at me. The realization hit him like a 10-pound sack of raw fleece. You are a cutie. You are a cutie. The pink flush on his ears rapidly descended, spreading down his neck and disappearing beneath his perfectly starched collar. For a man who relied entirely on science and facts, he suddenly looked completely incapable of processing basic data. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, and shoved his hands deep into the pockets of his lab coat. Your visual acuity is officially 2020, he managed to choke out, his voice sounding like it had been dragged through sandpaper. I have excellent vision, Dr. Pendleton. I purred, standing up and smoothing down my skirt. I see exactly what I want to see. Arthur took a half step back, running a hand through his immaculately styled hair, ruining the perfect, level part. Yes. Well, no further treatment is required. You are discharged from my care, Miss Croft. Oh, what a shame. I sighed dramatically, walking past him toward the door. I paused, letting my shoulder lightly brush against his rigid arm. I guess I'll just have to start dropping stitches near the clinic if I want to see you again. Have a good day, Arthur. Try not to overheat in that lab coat. I left him standing in the middle of exam room 1, completely speechless, looking like a man who had just realized that the most dangerous thing in his clinic wasn't a flying 5mm knitting needle, but the knitter who wielded it. Chapter 5. There is a common misconception that yarn is light. People see a fluffy skein of baby alpaca and assume it weighs roughly the same as a cloud. Those people have never had to receive a wholesale freight delivery of pure, tightly spun animal fiber. It was a Tuesday morning, and the delivery truck had unceremoniously dumped 4 massive, refrigerator-sized cardboard crates onto the sidewalk outside the knitted knot. They were filled with raw, undyed hanks of worsted-weight merino and a very luxurious, incredibly heavy alpaca silk blend. I stood on the pavement, hands on my hips, staring at the boxes. I tried to push the top one. It didn't budge. It was like trying to shove a solid block of concrete wrapped in a cardigan. I needed muscle. And unfortunately, my cousin Jenny was out with the flu, leaving me entirely alone. I glanced down the street toward Clear Vision Optometry. I hadn't seen Arthur since my scandalous eye chart flirtation the previous week. I probably should have felt embarrassed, but mostly, I just really wanted to see him squirm again. I abandoned my boxes and walked down to his clinic. The brass bells chimed, but instead of the usual pristine silence, the clinic was humming with an undercurrent of pure, unadulterated panic. Behind the reception desk, Arthur was knee-deep in a sea of manila folders. His lab coat was slightly wrinkled, a terrifying anomaly, and he was furiously typing on a keyboard attached to a completely black monitor. Dr. Pendleton? I asked, leaning over the counter. Did the geometry of the universe finally collapse? He looked up, his indigo eyes slightly wild. Catastrophic server failure. The cloud is down. The localized backup is corrupted. I have a waiting room full of presbyopic patients expecting progressive lens fittings in 20 minutes, and my digital charts are inaccessible. We are resorting to the physical archives. He gestured vaguely to the chaotic piles of paper folders covering every flat surface. For a man who relied entirely on order, he looked like he was about to start hyperventilating. I need to sort these by chronological appointment time, cross-reference with their last known refractive error, but my receptionist is currently on hold with IT and I cannot. He cut himself off, taking a sharp, stabilizing breath. I looked at the mess. It looked exactly like a complicated fair Al colorwork chart right before you weave in the ends. It was just data waiting to be tensioned properly. I'll make you a deal, I said, slipping my 4mm stainless steel circular needles out of my pocket and twirling them like a baton. I am incredibly good at deciphering complex, chaotic patterns. I will sort your physical archives, alphabetize your myopics, and get your schedule running manually. Arthur blinked, his hands freezing over the dead keyboard. You? But your entire existence is governed by whimsy and textiles. Knitting is just applied mathematics and coding, Arthur. It's binary. Knit purl. 10. I can organize this desk in 10 minutes flat, I promised. But in exchange, you have to come outside and help me move 400 pounds of raw, untreated alpaca fiber into my stockroom. He looked at me, then at the mountain of unsorted medical history, and then back at me. He looked like he was making a deal with a heavily knit devil. Fine, he gritted out. But we maintain strict HIPAA compliance. Do not read the actual diagnoses. I don't care about their astigmatisms, Doc. I just care about the alphabet. I slid behind the desk. Arthur stepped back, giving me a wide berth. I immediately went to work. It was surprisingly soothing. A pile for the 10 o'clock AMs, a pile for the 11 o'clock AMs. I organized them with the same ruthless efficiency I used when blocking a lace shawl. Within 12 minutes, the chaotic piles were transformed into neat, overlapping, chronologically precise rows. I tapped the final stack into a perfect square and handed him the top file. Your 9:30 a.m. is a Mrs. Gable. She's here for a glaucoma screening, I announced. Arthur stared at the neatly organized desk. He looked at me with a mixture of profound relief and deep, unsettling suspicion. That was terrifyingly efficient. Pattern recognition. I winked. Now, doctor. Time to pay the piper. The alpaca awaits. 20 minutes later, Arthur had abandoned his white lab coat and rolled up the sleeves of his expensive dress shirt to the elbows. I tried very hard not to stare at his forearms, which were surprisingly muscular for a man who spent his life holding a tiny flashlight, but I was only human. Why does wool weigh this much? Arthur grunted, his shoulder pressing against the side of the third crate, as we shoved it through the back door of my shop. Are there still actual animals inside this box? It's the density of the spin, I explained cheerfully, pushing from the other side. This is a heavy, bulky weight blend. It's meant for dense winter coats. Lift from the knees, Dr. P. Protect your lumbar spine. I am a medical professional, Penelope. I know how to hinge at the hips, he shot back, though he was entirely breathless. We managed to get the final crate into the stockroom. Arthur dropped his end, bracing his hands on his knees as he caught his breath. I grabbed a box cutter, sliced the top tape, and pulled the flaps open. Instantly, a massive cloud of microscopic alpaca dander and loose natural fibers puffed up into the air, glittering in the overhead light. Arthur inhaled deeply at the exact wrong moment. He froze. His eyes widened. And then the pristine, perfectly composed optometrist let out a sneeze so powerful it rattled the 3mm double-pointed needles on my pegboard. Oh no, I gasped, laughing as he sneezed again violently. I forgot to warn you about the dander. Alpaca is notoriously dusty before it's washed. I am experiencing a severe histamine response. Arthur wheezed, waving his hands through the cloud of fuzz. He sneezed a third time, stepping backward and accidentally backing right into a hanging display of superwash merino hanks. He spun around, trying to untangle himself, but only managed to get a trailing thread of blue yarn wrapped around his wrist. He looked entirely disheveled. His tie was tossed over his shoulder, his hair had lost its perfect structural part, and his dark trousers were completely covered in a fine layer of white fuzz. I stepped up to him, entirely forgetting myself. Hold still, you're covered, I laughed softly. Without thinking, I reached out and began brushing the alpaca dander off his chest. My hands smoothed over the warm, solid plane of his chest through his dress shirt. I could feel his heartbeat hammering against my palms. Fast, frantic, and completely out of rhythm. I froze, looking up. Arthur wasn't sneezing anymore. He was staring down at me, his breathing shallow. The scent of him, peppermint and clean sweat, mixed with the earthy smell of the raw yarn. We were standing in a cramped, dusty stockroom, completely surrounded by fiber, and for the first time, Dr. Arthur Pendleton wasn't pulling away. His hand came up, hovering just an inch over my waist, as if he wanted to touch me but was terrified he might break a rule. Your desk is very organized, he murmured, his voice dropping an entire octave, his indigo eyes dark and focused entirely on my mouth. Your visual acuity is terrible, I whispered back, my heart doing a complicated twisted stitch pattern against my ribs. You've got fuzz on your glasses. I reached up and gently pulled his glasses off his face. He didn't stop me. For a long, dangerous second, the blur between us vanished entirely. Chapter 6. If there is one force in the universe more relentless than a dropped stitch unraveling down a complex lace pattern, it is the Willow Creek Wednesday morning knit and gossip circle. Led by Mrs. Higgins, a retired librarian, who could knit a perfect Fair Isle sweater on 3mm stainless steel double points, while simultaneously interrogating you about your love life, the group was a formidable institution. I usually humored them, providing complimentary Earl Grey tea and soft, cream-colored baby wool for their projects. But today I was the target. "You're distracted, Penelope," Mrs. Higgins announced, her metal needles clicking at a terrifying speed. "Your tension is completely off. You've been staring at that pastel pink swatch for 20 minutes without making a single knit or purl." She wasn't wrong. Ever since the great alpaca dust incident in the stockroom 4 days ago, my brain had been completely short-circuiting. I kept phantom feeling the solid warmth of Arthur's chest beneath my palms, and it was ruining my gauge. "I have a date set up for you," Mrs. Higgins declared, leaving absolutely no room for debate. "He is a medical professional. Very stable. Excellent posture. He needs someone to introduce him to the concept of joy. And you need someone who knows how to properly balance a checkbook. You are meeting him at L'Obscurite at 7. I should have said no. But a part of me thought that maybe going on a date with a perfectly nice, boring stranger would finally flush the starched, infuriatingly handsome optometrist out of my system. At 6:55 p.m., I walked into L'Obscurite. Willow Creek's only fine dining restaurant was infamous for its romantic ambience, which was a polite way of saying they refused to pay their electricity bill. The interior was pitch black, illuminated only by flickering, aggressive little table candles. I had to slide my hand along the velvet wall just to avoid walking into a waiter. The hostess guided me to a corner booth. I couldn't see my date's face in the gloom, just the sharp, tailored silhouette of a man in a dark suit. "Hello," I said, sliding into the booth and smoothing down my dress. "I'm Penny. Mrs. Higgins sent me." The silhouette stiffened. A very familiar, incredibly deep sigh echoed across the table. "I am going to fire my receptionist," a smooth, clinical baritone muttered. I froze. I grabbed the tiny, flickering votive candle from the center of the table and dragged it closer to his face. The dim, golden light illuminated the flawless jawline, the perfectly parted hair, and the pristine, smudgeless glasses of Dr. Arthur Pendleton. "Arthur," I gasped. My receptionist, Brenda, told me she had arranged a networking dinner with a visiting ophthalmologist, Arthur said, pressing his fingers to his temples. He looked utterly out of his element, trapped in the dim, chaotic environment. I should have known it was a trap when she specifically ordered me not to bring my clinical charts. "Mrs. Higgins told me you were a stable professional who needed joy," I replied, bursting into laughter. "I can't believe we got set up. You and me? It's like trying to knit a delicate lace veil out of industrial steel wire." "A highly illogical pairing," he agreed. Though his indigo eyes were fixed on me, taking in the fact that I wasn't wearing my usual oversized, yarn-covered cardigans, but a rather nice, fitted emerald green dress. "Well, since we're trapped in this sensory deprivation tank, we might as well eat," I said, reaching for the menu. Arthur immediately pulled a small, sleek metal flashlight out of his jacket pocket and clicked it on, shining a harsh beam directly onto his menu. "Arthur, you cannot interrogate the appetizers," I hissed, shielding my eyes. "Penelope, the ambient lumens in this establishment are medically negligible," he argued, entirely serious. "My rod cells are working at maximum capacity just to identify the water glass. Prolonged scotopic vision, that is relying on low light vision, while attempting to read 8-point font is a guaranteed recipe for asthenopia." I strained Penny. "It's a health hazard." "It's romantic," I countered, kicking his shin gently under the table. "Put the tactical flashlight away. Your pupils are probably dilated to the size of dinner plates right now. Just live in the dark for an hour." He huffed, but clicked the flashlight off, plunging us back into the dim, moody candlelight. In the shadows, his face looked softer, less clinical. When the waiter arrived, Arthur ordered a perfectly seared, dry piece of halibut with steamed asparagus. Clean, tidy, predictable. I looked at the menu. I looked at Arthur's immaculate white dress shirt. The chaotic, yarn-tangling gremlin inside my soul took the wheel. "I will have the bourbon-glazed sticky ribs," I told the waiter with a sweet smile. "Extra vite," and a side of the garlic parmesan fries. Arthur's head snapped up. "Ribs? In a dark room? While wearing silk? I like to live dangerously, Doc. When the food arrived, it was exactly the disaster I had hoped for. The ribs were a messy, saucy mountain. I dug in with my hands, entirely abandoning my cutlery. I managed to get barbecue sauce on my thumb, my napkin, and somehow, the stem of my wine glass. Arthur watched me with a mixture of profound medical horror and total, unblinking fascination. He cut his halibut into perfectly symmetrical squares, but he barely ate. He was too busy tracking my chaotic consumption of the ribs. "You have a minor, localized spill," he murmured, his voice dropping low as the candlelight caught the gold flecks in his eyes. He reached across the table with his own pristine, white linen napkin. Before I could protest, his hand cupped my jaw. His thumb, wrapped in the linen, gently but firmly wiped a speck of barbecue sauce from the corner of my mouth. I stopped chewing. My pulse skyrocketed, hammering so loudly in my ears I was sure he could hear it. The sterile, uptight optometrist was touching my face in a dark restaurant, and the tension between us was suddenly pulled tighter than a cast-on row on a 2mm needle. "Got it," he whispered, his thumb lingering on my skin for just a second too long before he pulled away, clearing his throat and retreating behind his water glass. I sat there, my fingers covered in sticky glaze, completely paralyzed. The Wednesday morning knit and gossip circle had been right. Dr. Arthur Pendleton didn't need a visiting ophthalmologist. And suddenly, I didn't want to knit him a safety orange warning scarf anymore. I wanted to knit him a sweater. A permanent one. Chapter 7. Stepping out of l'obscurite and into the cool, crisp night air felt like waking up from a very strange, barbecue-scented fever dream. Arthur took a deep, audible breath the moment we hit the sidewalk, looking up at the street lamps with profound gratitude. "High-pressure sodium vapor lamps," he murmured, adjusting his glasses. "Not ideal for color rendering, but the lux output is a massive improvement over that cardiovascular hazard of a restaurant." "You survived, Dr. P," I teased, hoisting my oversized canvas knitting project bag higher onto my shoulder. It was currently stuffed with 3 half-finished projects, a measuring tape, and enough metal stitch markers to set off an airport security scanner. "And you didn't even get any sticky glaze on your perfect lapels. A medical miracle." He glanced down at me as we began the short walk back toward the center of Willow Creek. The tension from the booth, that brief, heart-stopping moment when his thumb had brushed my jaw, was still hovering between us, thick as unspun roving. "I have excellent fine motor control," he replied, though his voice lacked its usual starched authority. It sounded a little raspy. "And you, Penelope, are a chaotic force of nature. I'm surprised you didn't somehow weaponize a rib bone." "There's always next time," I grinned, feeling a completely unmedical flutter in my stomach at the realization that I wanted there to be a next time. The cobblestone streets of Willow Creek were mostly empty, the quaint storefronts dark for the night. As we walked, the rhythm of our footsteps synchronized. I found myself drifting closer to him, entirely by accident, until the sleeve of my emerald dress brushed against the wool of his suit jacket. Neither of us pulled away. Then disaster struck. I tend to overstuff my project bags. It's a chronic knitter's disease. You always think you'll need 40 miles of extra yardage just in case of an emergency. As I shifted the bag on my shoulder, the top clasp finally gave up. It popped open with a sad snap, and out tumbled a perfectly hand-wound cake of fingering weight silk merino yarn. It hit the pavement, bounced once, and immediately began unraveling as it rolled down the slight incline of the sidewalk. "Oh no, my gradient!" I gasped. I lunged for it. At the exact same second, Arthur's gentlemanly reflexes kicked in, and he dove for it too. The yarn cake spiraled around a wrought iron lamppost, leaving a trail of shimmering teal thread in its wake. I dropped to my knees, reaching out to trap the escaping ball. Arthur dropped into a crouch right beside me, his large, capable hands shooting out to pin the yarn to the cobblestones. Our hands collided. It wasn't a graceful, cinematic touch. My knuckles smashed into his wrist, his fingers clamped down over the back of my hand, and in the confusion, the trailing silk yarn looped twice around both of our wrists, effectively binding us together. We froze, kneeling on the sidewalk under the amber glow of the street lamp. I looked up. Arthur's face was mere inches from mine. His breath hitched, a sharp intake of air that ruffled my bangs. His eyes, usually so calculating and composed, were blown wide, his pupils dilated so deeply they nearly swallowed the indigo of his irises. "I've got it," I whispered, my voice completely abandoning me. My skin was tingling everywhere his hand was touching mine. Arthur didn't pull his hand away. He stared at our intertwined fingers, bound by the thin teal thread. I could feel his pulse hammering against my palm. It was frantic. Sinus tachycardia, he muttered under his breath, sounding entirely bewildered. What? I breathed. My resting heart rate is exactly 62 beats per minute, he said, his eyes flicking up to my lips, then back to my eyes. Currently, my autonomic nervous system is simulating a fight or flight response. I am experiencing vasodilation, a sudden spike in adrenaline. Are you having a medical emergency, Dr. Pendleton? I asked, completely unable to look away from his mouth. I cannot attribute this to cardiovascular exercise, he whispered, his thumb slowly, deliberately tracing the line of my knuckles. The physical exertion of catching a 3-ounce sphere of textiles does not warrant this physiological reaction. Maybe it's not the textiles, I suggested softly. He swallowed hard. For a second, I thought he was going to lean in. The air between us pulled tight, a perfectly tensioned thread waiting to snap. I tilted my chin up, closing my eyes, waiting for the clinical, uptight optometrist to finally bridge the gap. A loud, aggressive car horn blared from the street, shattering the silence. Arthur jerked backward as if he'd been shocked with a defibrillator. The sudden movement pulled the teal yarn tight, yanking my arm forward before the delicate silk fibers snapped in two. Apologies, he stammered, scrambling to his feet and violently smoothing down his suit jacket. He looked completely rattled. A man whose perfectly ordered universe had just been turned upside down by a piece of string. He quickly scooped up the yarn cake and handed it to me, avoiding my gaze. Your gradient is secure. Right. Thanks, I said, taking it, my hands shaking slightly as I stood up and dumped it back into my bag. We walked the remaining 2 blocks in absolute, charged silence. When we reached my apartment above the knitted knot, he gave me a stiff, formal nod, told me to have a good night, and practically speed walked away. I watched him go, leaning against my doorframe, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm of its own. I went upstairs, walked straight to my yarn stash, and bypassed all the scrap acrylics and cottons. I dug all the way to the back until I found a massive bag of the most expensive, luxurious, deeply saturated navy blue cascade wool I owned. Arthur Pendleton didn't know it yet, but he was getting a sweater. Chapter 8. There is a golden rule in the fiber arts community. You do not knit a sweater for a man unless you are prepared for the universe to immediately destroy your relationship. It is scientifically undocumented, but universally understood. We call it the sweater curse. The theory goes that by the time you finish the torso and cast on for the first sleeve, the recipient will suddenly decide he needs space, leaving you heartbroken and holding a garment that is tragically 3 sizes too large for you. I, however, was currently ignoring all historical data. I sat in the cozy window seat of the knitted knot, armed with my slickest 4.5mm stainless steel circular needles and 3 skeins of deep, saturated navy blue worsted weight wool. I was rapidly working on a gauge swatch, plotting out an incredibly complex Celtic braided cable pattern. The twisting, structured cables felt like Arthur, rigid, mathematical, and requiring intense concentration, while the soft, yielding nature of the wool was entirely me. Penelope Croft, a sharp, horrified voice rang out across the shop. I looked up. Mrs. Higgins had just walked in for the Wednesday morning knit and gossip circle, clutching her canvas tote bag like a pearl necklace. She was staring at the navy blue wool in my lap, as if it were radioactive. "Good morning, Mrs. Higgins," I said cheerfully, executing a perfect C4B, cable 4 back, using a tiny metal cable needle. "Tea is on the back counter." "Is that a worsted weight?" she demanded, marching toward me. "And are those armhole-shaping decreases sketched out on your notepad?" "It's a raglan hybrid," I admitted, my cheeks flushing slightly, "with a ribbed hem." The rest of the circle, including my cousin Jenny, who had finally recovered from her flu, gathered around my window seat. They looked like a council of textile elders arriving to deliver a grim prophecy. "Who is it for?" Jenny asked, her eyes narrowing as she took in the masculine colorway. "Penny, tell me you aren't doing what I think you're doing." "It's just a garment," I deflected, aggressively purling 2 stitches. "Humans require external thermal regulation. I am providing a service." "You are knitting a sweater for Dr. Turnip," Mrs. Higgins gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "Penelope, no. The sweater curse. You've only been on one date, and you spent half of it covered in barbecue sauce in a medically unsafe lighting environment. It wasn't a date, it was a setup. I argued, my metal needles clicking furiously. And we are not romantically involved. We just had a minor sidewalk incident involving an acute spike in his sympathetic nervous system. He experienced vasodilation. That's basically just science, not romance. If you knit him a sweater now, before a ring is on your finger, he will be gone before you bind off the collar, warned Mrs. Abernathy, a woman who had famously knit a beautiful Icelandic yoke sweater for her high school sweetheart, only to be dumped at the senior prom. I am not succumbing to a superstition, I said stubbornly, measuring my swatch with a plastic ruler. Besides, Arthur is a man of logic. He doesn't believe in curses. He believes in empirical evidence and the structural integrity of the human cornea. The curse doesn't care about his cornea, Jenny sighed, patting my shoulder. But if you're going to do this, you realize you need his exact measurements, right? You can't just eyeball a tailored fit for a man who wears suits that look mathematically drafted. My metal needles froze mid-stitch. Jenny was right. Arthur's entire existence was based on exactness. If I knit him a sweater with a sloppy drape or a dropped shoulder that didn't perfectly align with his acromioclavicular joint, he would likely assume I had fundamentally failed at basic geometry. I needed measurements. Specifically, I needed the exact distance from his left acromion process to his right, the circumference of his chest, and his precise sleeve length. I'll have to measure him, I whispered, the sheer, terrifying logistics of the task washing over me. How are you going to get a measuring tape around that man without him going into cardiac arrest? Mrs. Higgins asked, raising a highly skeptical eyebrow. I'm a professional, I lied, tossing my swatch into my bag. I'll use a stealth approach. Clinical precision. 20 minutes later, armed with a bright pink, retractable vinyl measuring tape hidden in my pocket, I pushed open the glass door of Clear Vision Optometry. Arthur was standing by the reception desk, adjusting the hinges on a pair of tortoiseshell frames. He looked up, and the moment his indigo eyes locked onto mine, I saw a microscopic stutter in his otherwise perfect posture. The memory of our tangled hands on the cobblestones instantly flooded the sterile room. Good morning, Miss Croft, he said, his voice dropping into that smooth clinical baritone that made my knees feel like overboiled yarn. Are you experiencing a recurrence of your epithelial abrasion? Nope. Vision is 20/20, I said, strolling right up to him. I stopped just a few inches from his chest, forcing him to look down at me. The scent of peppermint and laundry starch hit me like a physical wave. Actually, Dr. P, I'm here for some anatomical data. Arthur blinked, his perfectly groomed brows drawing together. Anatomical data? Yes. I whipped the pink measuring tape out of my pocket with a dramatic snap. I need to calculate the precise distance of your clavicle, the circumference of your deltoids, and the exact length of your radius and ulna. Arthur stared at the bright pink measuring tape, then looked back at my face, looking utterly bewildered. Penelope, what on earth are you doing? Applying the scientific method, I grinned, stepping right into his personal space and wrapping the measuring tape around his broad, rigid shoulders. Now hold still, doctor. I need perfect tension. Chapter 9. Measuring a man who acts like a human protractor is a delicate operation. I stretched the pink vinyl tape across the broad expanse of his back, bringing the ends together right over the center of his chest. Arthur froze completely, his arms hovering awkwardly at his sides. I had to step in entirely too close to read the numbers, my nose inches from his tie knot. 42 inches, I mumbled, trying to focus on the little black tick marks and not the way his breathing had suddenly turned shallow. I'm going to factor in 2 inches of positive ease so it isn't skin tight. We want structural integrity, but we don't want to restrict your intercostal muscles. Penelope, what are you fabricating? He demanded, his voice tight. He looked down at me, his dark indigo eyes wide behind his immaculate lenses. A wearable textile, I replied vaguely, shifting the tape measure up to his neck. I looped it around his collar, my knuckles lightly brushing against the warm skin of his nape. Arthur's Adam's apple bobbed. If this is another high-visibility safety garment, I must inform you that the orange one is currently undergoing localized laundering. Relax, Doc. I've graduated from warning signs. I grinned, moving to measure his sleeve length. I ran the tape from his shoulder joint down the long, solid line of his arm, stopping exactly at the styloid process of his wrist. 34 inches. Perfect. I was just about to calculate his shoulder-to-waist ratio when the brass bells on the front door chimed with a crisp, authoritative jingle. The air in the clinic immediately changed. It was as if someone had sucked all the chaotic, fuzzy warmth out of the room, replacing it with pure, filtered, air-conditioned logic. "Arthur," a sleek, highly polished voice called out. "I see your waiting room is still utilizing mid-century seating. We'll definitely need to overhaul the ergonomics when we restructure." I stepped back, retracting my pink tape measure with a loud zip. Standing in the doorway was a woman who looked like she had just stepped out of a highly exclusive medical journal. She was wearing a perfectly tailored, slate gray pencil skirt and a pristine white silk blouse. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a chignon so tight and flawless it defied gravity. But the most intimidating thing about her wasn't her clothes. It was her eyes. They were sharp, piercing, and completely unhindered by glasses. Arthur immediately stepped away from me, smoothing his tie down and clearing his throat, his professional mask slamming back into place faster than a snap fastener. "Chloe. Dr. Vance," he corrected himself, gesturing vaguely to the room. "You're early. I didn't expect you until the lunch hour." "I finished my LASIK consultations in the city ahead of schedule," Dr. Chloe Vance said, gliding into the room on heels that clicked with terrifying geometric precision. Her gaze swept over the clinic, lingering for a fraction of a second on the dustless baseboards before finally landing on me. She looked me up and down. She took in my chaotic, messy auburn bun held together by a spare 3.5 mm metal cable needle. She noted the oversized, hand-knit mustard cardigan I was wearing, and the bright pink measuring tape still clutched in my hand. Her expression didn't change, but I felt instantly categorized, diagnosed, and dismissed. "Arthur, is this a patient?" she asked, her tone entirely pleasant but laced with clinical detachment. "Because if she is experiencing an acute strabismus or requires a bespoke fitting, I can step outside." "No. I have 20/20th's vision," I interjected, standing up a little straighter. "Miss Croft is a local business owner," Arthur said. He hesitated for just a microsecond, but I heard it. It was the hesitation of a man trying to explain a chaotic anomaly in his otherwise perfectly ordered data set. "She owns the yarn shop 2 doors down." Textiles." Chloe smiled. It was a smile that didn't reach those laser-corrected eyes. She turned her attention entirely back to Arthur, stepping gracefully into the space I had just occupied. "Well, I brought the preliminary acquisition files. The board is very excited about bringing clear vision optometry under the Vance optical umbrella. We can update your diagnostic tech, bring in a new optical coherence tomography machine, and double your patient load by Q3. She reached out and, with surgical precision, plucked a single microscopic thread of safety orange wool off the lapel of Arthur's white coat. "You really must be careful with particulate matter, Arthur," she murmured. "It's a nightmare for the sterile field." I felt my stomach drop, unraveling faster than a dropped stitch on slick stainless steel needles. I looked at the two of them standing side by side. They made complete, infuriating sense. They were grayscale. They were calculated. They were two highly optimized humans discussing corporate buyouts and corneal topography. And I was just the messy neighbor who occasionally stabbed herself in the eye with her own craft supplies. The confidence I had felt 5 minutes ago, when Arthur's heart had been racing under my measuring tape, completely vanished. I felt like a cheap skein of acrylic yarn next to pure spun silk. "I should get back to my shop," I said, my voice suddenly feeling very small. I shoved the pink measuring tape into my pocket. Arthur looked over Chloe's shoulder, his brow furrowing slightly. "Penelope, wait, the measurements." "I have enough data, Dr. Pendleton," I interrupted, forcing a bright, plastic smile onto my face. "Don't let me keep you from your restructuring. Good luck with the sterile fields." I turned and walked out of the clinic, the bells chiming a sad, hollow note behind me. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, I pulled my notebook out of my pocket and looked at the numbers I had scribbled down. 42-inch chest, 34-inch sleeves. I had all the measurements to knit him the perfect sweater. But as I glanced back through the pristine glass window and saw Dr. Chloe Vance laughing at something Arthur said, I realized the horrible truth. I might have his measurements, but I didn't fit into his world at all. Chapter 10. Knitting a complex, all-over Celtic cable pattern isn't just about looping yarn. It's essentially applied mathematics. To perfectly execute the twisting, braided fabric, I had to map the stitches like vectors in a Hilbert space, navigating an infinite set of dimensional possibilities, shifting the plane of the fabric every time I moved a cluster of stitches onto my smooth, metal cable needle. I was currently sitting on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by soft pink and cream skeins of yarn I had brought up from the shop's minimalist display, trying to calculate the armhole decreases for Arthur's navy sweater. I was practically using ordinary differential equations to ensure the exact rate of decrease perfectly matched the rigid, mathematical slope of his shoulders. But my brain was entirely fogged by the lingering image of Dr. Chloe Vance. "You are stress knitting," my cousin Jenny observed, stepping over a pile of blush pink baby wool to hand me a cup of chamomile tea. "Your tension is so tight on those 4.5mm stainless steel circulars, you're going to snap the metal." "I am mathematically optimizing the shoulder drape," I corrected, aggressively purling through the wrong side of the fabric. "If I don't get the gauge perfectly right, the entire structural integrity of the garment will collapse, just like my dignity did yesterday in that clinic." "Penny, the woman is a corporate suit with a medical degree. She's trying to buy his clinic, not his heart." She picked a microscopic speck of orange wool off his lapel, Jenny. She practically established a sterile field around him. I sighed, letting my metal needles drop into my lap. The rich, navy blue fabric pooled heavily over my knees. He fits into her world. She probably understands his jokes about astigmatisms. If my life were an equation, Arthur is the singular point where all my logic completely breaks down. Jenny rolled her eyes. "Put the sweater down. Go take a walk. Get some fresh air that isn't contaminated with alpaca dander, and get some dinner. You'll feel better." Reluctantly, I agreed. I slipped on my oversized cream cardigan, abandoned my mathematical cable charts, and headed down into the cool evening air of Willow Creek. I didn't have a destination in mind, but my feet inevitably carried me toward the newer, more gentrified end of town. That was where Lumina had recently opened, a stark, aggressively modern fusion restaurant that prided itself on farm-to-table microgreens and an interior lighting design that practically mimicked an operating room. It was all floor-to-ceiling glass, white marble, and chrome. I was walking past the massive front windows, pulling my cardigan tighter against the chill, when I saw them. Sitting at a pristine corner table, illuminated by the harsh, perfectly balanced LED lighting, were Dr. Arthur Pendleton and Dr. Chloe Vance. I froze on the sidewalk, stepping into the shadow of a street lamp to avoid being seen. They looked like a match set. Arthur was wearing a crisp charcoal suit, his posture impeccably straight, his glasses catching the bright overhead light. Chloe sat across from him, her posture equally flawless, wearing a sleek cream-colored blazer. Between them on the table were no messy ribs, no flickering, chaotic candles, and absolutely no spilled yarn. Instead, Chloe had a sleek tablet propped up between their water glasses. She was pointing to what looked like a vividly colored, three-dimensional topographical map of a human cornea. Even through the glass, I could see the intense, animated focus on Arthur's face. He leaned in, tracing a line on the screen with his index finger, his lips moving rapidly as he debated whatever metric she was displaying. He looked completely in his element. He looked relaxed in a way he never did when he was dodging my rogue craft supplies or sneezing in my stockroom. Chloe laughed at something he said, a neat, controlled sound, and seamlessly tapped the screen to swipe to a new chart. She didn't drop her purse. She didn't have barbecue sauce on her thumb. She was 20/20 perfection, offering him an optimized, flawlessly focused future. I looked down at my own hands. There was a faint, blue dye stain on my left index finger from the navy wool, and a small, pink indentation on my thumb from gripping my metal needles too tightly. Suddenly, the idea that I could just knit my way into Arthur Pendleton's highly calibrated life felt utterly ridiculous. The sweater curse didn't need to strike. Our relationship was structurally flawed from the cast-on row. I didn't wait to see if they ordered dessert. I turned on my heel and power walked all the way back to the knitted knot, my vision blurring with entirely non-medical tears. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't map any more coordinates. I didn't calculate any more vectors. I picked up the heavy, half-finished navy blue sweater, carefully slid rubber point protectors onto the tips of the 4.5mm stainless steel needles to keep the stitches from slipping off, and walked over to my closet. I pushed past my bright, chaotic cardigans and shoved the project bag onto the very top shelf, pushing it all the way to the back where the shadows swallowed the dark blue wool. Operation Defrost the Turnip was officially over. I was going to stick to my pastel colorways, my cozy shop, and my messy, beautifully imperfect life. And I was never stepping foot inside Clear Vision Optometry ever again. Chapter 11. You can accurately measure the state of a knitter's mental health entirely by their stitch tension. It had been 10 days since I shoved Arthur's half-finished navy sweater into the dark abyss of my closet. In an attempt to reclaim my peace, I had fully leaned into my shop's new soft life aesthetic. The knitted knot was a sanctuary of blush pinks, warm creams, and soothing lavender. I was currently sitting in the window seat, working on an incredibly delicate, cobweb weight lace shawl using my sharpest 2.5mm stainless steel circular needles. It was supposed to be a calming, meditative project. Instead, it was a disaster. My tension was so aggressively tight that the soft pastel pink silk mohair blend felt like it was turning into bulletproof Kevlar. I had missed 3 yarn overs, completely botched a centered double decrease, and had to frog back 5 rows just to fix a structural error that would have ruined the drape. My world, despite the soft pinks surrounding me, felt entirely grayscale. "You're suffocating the yarn, Penny," Jenny said softly, coming over to place a fresh cup of Earl Grey tea on the small wooden table beside me. "If you knit that lace any tighter, it's going to collapse into a singularity." "I am fine," I lied, aggressively inserting my left metal needle into a pearl bump. "I am perfectly focused. My visual acuity is excellent. I am a machine of domestic efficiency." "You haven't looked out the window in a week and a half," she pointed out gently. "You changed your morning coffee run to the cafe on 4th Street, just so you wouldn't have to walk past his clinic. You are officially in mourning for a man you never actually dated." "I am not mourning. I am logically distancing myself from a structurally incompatible variable," I insisted, though my voice wavered slightly. The brass bells above the door jingled furiously. In marched Mrs. Higgins, wielding her canvas tote bag like a weapon of mass gossip. She looked entirely too triumphant for a Wednesday morning. "I have reconnaissance," she announced to the shop at large, marching straight over to my window seat. "First-hand, medically verified reconnaissance." I tried to focus on my lace chart. "If this is about Mrs. Abernathy's new alpaca blend, I already know it sheds." "It is about your optometrist, Penelope," Mrs. Higgins corrected, sitting heavily in the armchair opposite me. "I just had my annual checkup for my reading glasses. The man is malfunctioning." My metal needles stopped clicking. I didn't look up, but my heart immediately did a complicated cable twist in my chest. "He is highly optimized, Mrs. Higgins. He doesn't malfunction." "He was wearing a wrinkled shirt, Penny." "Wrinkled," she whispered, as if reporting a major felony. "And he didn't have his iced coffee. He was drinking hot chamomile tea from a ceramic mug that looked like it had been washed by hand." But that isn't the most shocking part. I couldn't help it. I looked up. "What is?" "He couldn't calibrate the phoropter," she said, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the scoop. "He was trying to check my astigmatism, clicking the lenses back and forth, asking 1 or 2. 1 or 2. But he was completely distracted. He kept looking out his window, down the street, toward this shop." A tiny, dangerous spark of hope flared in my chest, but I quickly smothered it with the mental image of Dr. Chloe Vance's perfect, laser-corrected smile. He was probably just calculating the square footage of his new corporate buyout. "That's the other thing," Mrs. Higgins leaned in, lowering her voice. Dr. Vance was there. She was tapping on her little tablet, talking about maximizing patient turnover for the Q3 merger. And right while she was explaining how to sterilize the waiting room decor, Dr. Pendleton stopped her. "He stopped her?" Jenny echoed, leaning over the counter, completely invested. "Cold," Mrs. Higgins nodded. "He took his glasses off, rubbed his eyes, and told her the deal was off. He said, and I quote, 'Because my hearing is still exceptional. My practice requires a localized element of chaos, Chloe. Your corporate model is entirely too clinical for my long-term structural happiness.' Then he showed her the door. My jaw practically hit my lap. The 2.5mm needles slipped from my fingers, the tiny metal tips clinking together as they rested against the pink lace. He rejected the buyout. He rejected the grayscale, perfectly optimized future. He looked miserable, Penelope, Mrs. Higgins concluded, giving me a pointed, authoritative glare. The man's depth perception is completely shot because his heart isn't in his work. He's navigating a world without color. And you are sitting here strangling a piece of pink mohair, when you should be marching over there? I stared at the intricate, tight stitches in my lap. For the past 10 days, I had convinced myself that I was a messy anomaly he needed to cure. But what if I was the exact chaos he had been searching for to break up the clinical sterility of his life? I can't just march over there. I breathed, my hands suddenly shaking. What if I misread the tension? What if he just realized Chloe was a bad business partner? Then you are a coward who doesn't deserve worsted weight, Mrs. Higgins sniffed, standing up and adjusting her cardigan. But you'd better figure it out quickly, because a man who abandons his tie clip is a desperate man. Chapter 12. Saturday mornings at the Knitted Knot were typically a picture of organized, pastel-tinted serenity. I had spent the early hours arranging a new window display featuring soft pinks, warm creams, and delicate lace patterns. The shop was bustling with local crafters, the air filled with the gentle clinking of metal needles, and the soothing scent of lavender sachets. It was my cozy, carefully constructed sanctuary. Then, the brass bells above the door didn't just chime. They violently clanged against the glass, announcing the arrival of a human hurricane. The entire shop fell silent. Mrs. Higgins paused mid-purl. Jenny nearly dropped a stack of crochet hooks. Standing in the doorway, chest heaving, was Dr. Arthur Pendleton. But this wasn't the starched, perfectly calibrated medical professional who calculated the aerodynamic drag of his own necktie. He looked like a man who had lost a vicious, back-alley brawl with entropy. His charcoal suit jacket was severely wrinkled. His tie was completely missing, the top 3 buttons of his crisp shirt undone. His hair, usually parted with geometric perfection, was wildly disheveled, as if he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. He locked eyes with me from across the shop. The intense, dark indigo of his gaze was so sharp it practically had its own focal length. "Penelope," he announced, his deep baritone cutting through the silence of the yarn shop. He started marching toward me with a terrifying, single-minded determination. He was completely ignoring his usual spatial awareness, abandoning all logic and environmental risk assessment. "Arthur," I breathed, standing up from my stool behind the counter. Are you experiencing a systemic malfunction?" He didn't answer. He just kept walking. Unfortunately, in his hyper-focused state, he failed to calculate the trajectory of the massive, floor-level wicker basket overflowing with hanks of undyed, fingering-weight organic cotton. His right foot hooked the edge of the basket. I watched in slow motion as his center of gravity fundamentally collapsed. For a man who understood physics, his recovery attempt was a total disaster. He pitched forward, throwing his arms out to brace his fall, and crashed directly into a spinning pegboard display rack filled with 4mm aluminum circular needles. The sound was spectacular. It was a cacophony of snapping plastic packaging, clinking metal, and dull thuds as 50 sets of slick aluminum needles rained down upon him. The rack tipped, pulling down a secondary display of long, mercerized cotton threads. By the time Arthur hit the floor, he was entirely buried in a mountain of pastel fiber and 4mm metal sticks. The strong cotton yarn had somehow looped around his left ankle, crisscrossed over his chest, and tangled around his right wrist, effectively binding him to the display stand. "Oh my God, Arthur!" I gasped, scrambling around the counter and rushing to his side. "Do not move me," Arthur groaned from the floor, holding up one hand. His glasses were knocked completely askew, hanging precariously off his left ear. "If I move, the structural integrity of this textile snare will tighten. I am currently restrained by... What gauge is this?" "It's a fingering weight cotton. It has zero elasticity. Arthur, you're essentially zip-tied." I dropped to my knees beside him, my hands fluttering over the chaotic tangle, trying to find the end of the thread to unravel him. "Leave it," he commanded, his voice suddenly sharp, completely ignoring the fact that he was lying on the floor of a yarn shop covered in aluminum. He reached up with his free hand and grabbed my wrist. His grip was warm, solid, and incredibly firm. "Arthur, you're tangled. I have spent the last 34 years of my life operating on a strictly linear equation," he interrupted, staring up at me, his chest rising and falling rapidly against the cotton bindings. "I believe that if I controlled every variable, if I maintained perfect optical clarity and clinical sterility, my life would be flawless." I stopped pulling at the yarn, my breath catching in my throat. The entire shop was dead silent, 30 knitters watching the scene unfold like a daytime drama. "But you," Arthur continued, his thumb gently tracing the pulse point on my wrist, are an anomaly. You are a singular point where all my logic completely breaks down. My equations cannot account for you. My tension is entirely off. Arthur, I whispered, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I tried to look at my charts this week, Penny, he confessed, his voice dropping into a desperate, raw octave. I tried to look at topographical maps and refractive data and corporate buyouts, and all I could see was that I was sitting in a perfectly sterile, grayscale room, and all the color was 2 doors down. My visual acuity is completely compromised. Without you, my entire world is blurred. A tear, totally unbidden, slipped down my cheek. I laughed, a wet, chaotic, overjoyed sound. Are you diagnosing yourself with love blindness, Dr. Pendleton? I am diagnosing myself with an acute, chronic, incurable need for you, he corrected, his indigo eyes blazing with absolute certainty, despite the fact that a 4mm metal needle was currently resting on his collarbone. I don't want a perfectly blocked, sterile existence. I want the drop stitches. I want the chaos. I want the neon orange warning signs. But Dr. Vance, I terminated the merger, he said fiercely, cutting me off. She wanted to optimize my waiting room. I told her the only thing I plan on putting in my waiting room is a very loud, very disorganized display of soft pink yarn, provided my favorite patient will agree to move her things in. I stared down at him. He was completely immobilized by my craft supplies. His glasses were crooked, and he had never looked more handsome in his entire life. The rigid, starched turnip had completely melted. You're a very stubborn man, Arthur Pendleton, I whispered, leaning over him, my face inches from his. I am a man who finally has 20/20th hindsight, he replied softly. Now please, Penelope, untangle me so I can kiss you. Chapter 13. Untangling a zero-elasticity cotton bind is a delicate procedure, I whispered, my face hovering inches from his. I have to find the master loop, or I'll just tighten the knot around your radius. Penelope, I will legally allow you to amputate my arm if it means you kiss me in the next 5 seconds. Arthur groaned, his indigo eyes fixed fiercely on my mouth. Despite his medical clearance for amputation, I showed mercy. My fingers worked with practiced, rapid precision, finding the center pull of the tangle, and threading it backward over his wrist and ankle. Within moments, the tension snapped, the cotton went slack, and Arthur was officially liberated from his textile prison. He didn't waste a single second. Before I could even stand up, Arthur shifted his weight, rose to his knees amidst the scattered 4mm aluminum needles, and caught my face in both of his hands. His palms were warm, slightly rough, and incredibly firm. Perfect tension, he murmured. And then he kissed me. It wasn't a sterile, measured, perfectly calibrated kiss. It was chaotic. It was desperate. It felt like dropping 3 stitches in a lace pattern, and realizing the garment looked infinitely better because of the mistake. His lips were soft but demanding, and the scent of peppermint, laundry starch, and the faint, earthy smell of the cotton we were kneeling on completely surrounded me. I grabbed the lapels of his wrinkled charcoal suit jacket, pulling him closer, my fingers tangling in the hair at the nape of his neck that had escaped its perfect part. The entire yarn shop erupted into applause. I heard Mrs. Higgins give a highly uncharacteristic, piercing whistle, and the clinking of metal knitting needles against teacups echoed around us. When Arthur finally pulled back, we were both breathless. His glasses were completely crooked, sitting at a wild 45-degree angle across his nose. He had never looked better. I reached up with a smile and gently straightened his frames. Your pupillary distance was completely off-center, Doc. I don't care, he laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that I realized I wanted to hear every single day for the rest of my life. He stood up, offering me his hand, and pulled me to my feet. The shop patrons were practically vibrating with gossip-fueled adrenaline, but Arthur only had eyes for me. He reached into the inner breast pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a crumpled, violently colored bundle of fabric. He gave it a shake, and it unfurled. It was my safety orange drop-stitch, asymmetrical warning scarf. You kept it, I gasped, my hands flying to my mouth. Arthur, I thought you were having it laundered because you were embarrassed by the structural flaws. Embarrassed? He asked, looking at the hideous orange wool as if it were spun gold. Penny, this scarf violates every law of geometry and aesthetic theory I hold dear. It has 3 drop ladders, a massive gauge inconsistency, and it sheds. and I have carried it in my pocket every single day since you gave it to me." He carefully draped the tragic orange scarf around his neck, letting it clash horribly with his expensive suit. "It reminds me," he said softly, stepping into my space and wrapping his arms around my waist, "that sometimes the most beautiful things are the ones you can't measure with a ruler." "You are so cheesy," I sniffled, burying my face in his chest, right against the scratchy orange wool. "I am empirically devoted to you," he corrected, kissing the top of my head. "Now, I believe you have some measurements of mine in your notebook, and I'd like to formally request a bespoke garment. Navy blue if possible." I looked up at him, my heart doing a final, triumphant cable twist. "You know there's a curse, right? If I knit you a sweater before we're married, we're mathematically doomed to break up." Arthur smiled, his indigo eyes completely clear, totally focused, and blazing with certainty. "Then I suppose you'd better knit quickly, Penelope, because I have absolutely no intention of letting you go." Epilogue. 1 year later. The waiting room of Clear Vision Optometry looked significantly different these days. The stark, mid-century leather chairs had been softened with hand-knit, cream-colored throw pillows. A massive, lush, pastel pink and green knitted tapestry hung on the far wall to dampen the acoustics. But the true centerpiece of the room was the beautifully framed, hyper-realistic anatomical model of a human eyeball, meticulously crafted out of silk merino wool using incredibly precise 3.5mm stainless steel double-pointed needles. I had even included the optic nerve, because Arthur appreciated anatomical accuracy in his textiles. "Mrs. Higgins, your intraocular pressure is excellent," Arthur's smooth, baritone voice carried out from exam room 1. "And your astigmatism remains completely stable. You are cleared for all complex lace work." "Thank you, doctor," Mrs. Higgins replied, bustling out of the room a moment later, clutching her canvas tote bag. She gave me a triumphant wink as she passed the reception desk where I was currently sitting, charting my latest pattern. "Have a good day, Mrs. Higgins," I called out, my metal needles clicking happily. Arthur stepped out of the exam room, leaning against the doorframe. He was holding a patient chart, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at me. He was wearing a perfectly fitted, beautifully structured navy blue cable knit sweater. The shoulders sloped with exact mathematical precision. The ribbing gripped his waist perfectly, and the intricate Celtic braids across the chest highlighted his broad shoulders in a way that should have come with a medical warning label. The sweater curse had been officially, thoroughly defeated. "You're staring, Dr. Pendleton," I teased, setting down my 4mm circulars and resting my chin in my hands. The diamond ring on my left hand caught the bright, clinical light of the clinic, scattering a prism of tiny rainbows across my desk. "I am merely observing a flawless visual field, Mrs. Pendleton," Arthur replied, walking over and placing a warm kiss on my forehead. He smelled as always like peppermint and crisp linen, but now there was a faint, permanent undercurrent of wool and lavender clinging to him. He picked up my hand, his thumb tracing the smooth metal of my wedding band, right next to the small callus on my index finger from my metal knitting needles. "Are you ready for lunch?" he asked, his indigo eyes shining behind his spotless glasses. "I found a new place. It has terrible ambient lighting and they serve incredibly messy tacos." I laughed, standing up and looping my arms around his perfectly cabled neck. "I love you, you big turnip." Arthur smiled, leaning down to capture my lips in a kiss that still made my sympathetic nervous system completely short-circuit. "And I love you, Penelope," he murmured against my mouth, with perfect 2020s foresight.